So, where should we begin? When she met him, he love-bombed her and elevated her to the level of queen, and she thought she was really special. But within a few months, he began to demean her, and then she realized that in fact she was just one of his many patterns. How do we give up on this idea that we are so special, so unique, so indispensable and irreplaceable without it becoming a breakdown of our identity? Join me, Esther Perel, for another episode of Where Should We Begin?
Hey, Esther. So in the last couple of years, I had a relationship that was basically an emotional roller coaster of like the best of everything at the beginning and then kind of really just turned into absolutely nothing. And now 6-8 months after stopping contact with this person completely, I feel destroyed from it and that I'm like worthless and incredibly replaceable, and I know other women have had the same exact experience with this person, but also I really truly felt so much hope at the beginning of my relationship with him, and I thought that I was different, I was special, and he really did make me feel that way. And I'm not the kind of person who just goes into any relationships or likes that many people. It's really pretty hard for me to, and I'm 44 now, and I started this relationship with him when I was 42. He's 10 years younger than me. I was confident and happy at the time, but also had given up on finding love, and he offered so much. And for a minute, it felt really great, and there was so much promise. And then it really started to dissolve in this way, and it also dissolved at the same time as my father was dying, and he died, and then everything really kind of came to a head of like just knowing this person is absolutely wrong for me and not the person I thought he was. And it took another year for me to really end things with him. 3 months later, he's engaged to a new person, and I don't know how to like bounce back, and I don't know if I can trust anybody ever again. And I want to, because I want a partnership. I want long-lasting love, and that was the main reason I ended things with him, because I knew it wasn't going to happen with him, and I still want that, but I don't know that I can trust anybody anymore.
Wow. And the question is,
I mean, how do I trust myself, people, the idea? I don't know. It's hard.
it's hard to listen to it too, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to listen to the parts about feeling worthless, you know? So, yeah. And that it's hard to hear that it's so much about him still, you know? Like, I've lost myself in that.
You've lost yourself.
Just that I lost myself in the entirety of that relationship and the idea of it, and just let my own like interests and joys and who I am as a person just be very like bottom of the totem pole.
I understand the principle of what you're saying, but I would love to understand the particular.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what happened? How did you guys meet? And then I'll ask you a little bit about who was there before, because your sense of trust can't just hinge on one man. So give me just a little bit of the story as you have lived it.
So I met him on a dating app, and the context was that was, you know, about 2 years after a very long-term 10-year relationship that I had with somebody. And I dated some other people since then. I kind of just turned about 42 at the time, and I was just sort of like, well, you know what? I'm just going to date on dating apps. I'm going to maybe just have fun with it. I'm not going to care. I'm not going to have expectations. I mean, not exactly true because I'm not capable of that, but I just wanted to be more carefree with it. So I opened up to dating younger men, and he kind of popped up. And then I went to meet him, and he was a mutual friend. So he knew people in our friend network. And so I kind of trusted that a little bit. And then at first I just thought it might be fun, and he was attractive and he traveled a lot, and there was a spontaneity to the way that we interacted, you know. He was very proactive and like very, I mean, now I guess what I see is a little bit love bombing, but he was kind of measured with it at the beginning, and it was very like, it felt good. It felt comfortable. It felt like this kind of interaction I was looking for with a man, that I didn't have to work extra hard to know how they felt about me. He was kind of giving it to me, and I was taking it. I was like, okay, I like this. I like the way I feel with this person. And I knew he had had a lot of previous relationships, but I was trying not to like poo-poo on that and just be like, okay, maybe this person really does like me and does want to be with me. And I kind of just like went with it and enjoyed it. And we moved in really fast. We just started like talking about not even marriage, but kind of alluding to it, and even talking about babies at like a very early stage in our relationship, maybe like 2 months in. And for me, I was like, this is scary territory because I'd kind of given up on having children. My last relationship ended when I was 38. I was sort of just dating, and I was now 42. I was like, I don't know if that will happen in a biological sense. But he made me kind of think, or we together felt excited about that. And it was all very fantasy and very beautiful fantasy. And I just leaned right into it. I felt really good about that for the first couple of months. And then things kind of changed. It shifted.
So at 2 months you move in, and then right after that things begin to go down?
Yeah, maybe a few months after that. So he moved in sort of like May, and then June, July, I started to feel things just didn't feel the same, and the intimacy changed. Like our sex life was very intimate, very connected. I was also like, this is the first time I've had this kind of sexual relationship with somebody. And then things just kind of shifted, and I tried to talk to him about it. I tried to just be like, what's the deal? And I was met with this intense kind of aggression, like, oh, my last girlfriend just said that same thing, and you just don't want me to fuck you anymore. So that, like, just very mean language, like, that I wasn't used to. And I was just like taken aback by it. And I just didn't know. He was so prickly whenever I would want to talk about something. It just felt like a dismissive, aggressive, and ultimately like, why are you pushing this? Like, stop trying to push this. And it was like, you're just being insecure. You're just, you know.
It's your problem.
Yeah, it's my problem.
And tell me something, given that he was a mutual friend, or that you had mutual friends, and that you knew that you were what you called a pattern of his, and not nearly that special and chosen,
Yeah.
or you were chosen to enact a pattern one more time.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet or speak with anyone else who knew him?
That had dated him, like been with him,
or knew
just knew
somebody
him?
who had did him. You know, this kind of information in a circle of friends is actually stuff that gets shared quite widely. It doesn't mean you hear it and you listen to it.
No,
but,
of course. And I may not have either.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of what had happened, he kind of told me about a little bit. So I think he's kind of good at keeping it from some of his friends, but in the bigger network, there was a lot of talk about and concern. And actually somebody reached out to a friend of ours and told her to tell me not to trust him, but they never told me because it was right around the time that my dad died. And so everybody was worried about me and I'm trying to protect me, I think, but obviously like scared for me because there's also other stories about physical abuse with past partners, some of which he had told me about in the context of our relationship. So I kind of felt like, okay, he's talking about it. Maybe there's some learning there or whatever. And
is the death of your father a big loss?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've just had in rapid succession 2 major losses.
Yeah. And I think that regardless of like the information I know about him, and some of what I found out about my ex was much later after I was broke up with him. But one of the things I started to feel when my dad died, it was a real switch. Like he was angry and aggressive towards me, and it felt like he didn't have alone time because we were living together, and it was the day after my dad died, and I just didn't understand who the person was I was with. I was like, who are you? Like, you told me we wanted to take care of each other, and here I am in the worst kind of thing in my life, and you're complaining about alone time and shouting at me. And also he was physically abusive towards himself when I was still angry with him, and I was still hurt by the way he was acting. He would physically hurt himself and hate
By doing
himself,
what?
like hitting himself in the head and banging his head on the table and storming out. And then he would 5 minutes later send me pictures of us or a song or something very
Okay.
emotionally manipulative.
Did you use that word then, or did that word need maturation till it came up?
Definitely needed maturation. I think I understood what was happening a little bit at the time, but I really didn't see it fully. I know his history is really complicated. He had a lot of deaths in his family. He is from an abusive background. He has had a horrible life in a lot of ways. So I made a lot of excuses for him, I think, that made it hard for me to see what was happening as it was happening.
You have a fairly clear understanding of what was going on and who you were with. And you know that it's not personal. I mean, I'm saying it in a simple way, but there's some relief sometimes in knowing it wasn't me. It just could be anybody, and the story will be the same. But sometimes we so much want to feel special that we'd rather think it's me and totally undermine our sense of self-worth. But at least we are the protagonist of the story rather than the auxiliary.
Yeah.
I'm saying it with care because you try to understand him, you try to make excuses for him, you try to be empathic toward him, you try to explain his current behavior because of his past history as if it's a straight line. There are lots of people with hard lives who turn out to be caring and considerate and not nearly that selfish.
Yeah.
And not nearly completely unhinged the moment the other person isn't completely focused on them.
Yeah.
And the invitation that I have for you is to experience the grief and the loss that your life hasn't followed a certain trajectory as you had imagined, but without taking it on yourself. There is such an attempt to blame, that we so think that we are in charge of destiny. We bought into this notion that it's all in our control and it's you make your life, and part of it is very much the case, but there's circumstances and there's that big unknown called life. You know, your father's illness, your father's death. You were close to him?
It's complicated. I'm close. He was always in my life. He's a big presence, but he is a complicated presence in my life. And the way I feel about him, of course, not of course, but it does mirror a lot of the things I have in my relationships with men.
Such as?
Just my sensitivity to levels of affection. He was not a very affectionate person. He was constantly telling other people how proud he was of me and how much he loved me, but I never heard
to
that.
Your face.
Never heard that myself. To me, it was like, oh, yeah, it's okay. You did this thing, whatever. And that reminded me a lot of other relationships I've had where they might be very giving and telling of other people, but when it comes to me, they struggle. I was also the one to always poke my dad, in the sense of pick on his things that I didn't think he was doing right and I didn't agree with, and I was always the one to speak up to him and challenge him. And I don't think anybody in my family appreciated that. Like they were just like, you should be quiet, you know? And
Because you should be quiet because
because he was an angry man. And I think my
you were
brothers
stoking
were,
him. They saw you were stoking him.
yeah. And I think I had a little bit of a protection barrier being a girl. And I don't think my brothers felt that. I think they just didn't want to deal with it. I don't think they had protection in quite the same way.
Yes, how many brothers?
3.
And you are number?
4. 3 older brothers.
Older brothers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And is there anyone else?
No. Just my 3 older brothers, my mom and my dad. Yeah.
And mom and dad?
They were together for until he died. I mean, they separated for a little bit. He cheated on her at one point. I don't know. It's hard because I've always kind of seen my dad as this very weak character that I just don't respect. But he was always also kind of there all the time. And I think my mom loved him. I mean, I don't know, like I know she loved him and she gave so much to him, but he really wasn't a very good parent. I don't know if he was the greatest partner either, but I think she stuck with him for a lot of reasons. But
and when you say he wasn't a good parent, what sits in there?
I think my dad had a lot of arrested development. I think he was like, his dad died when he was 12 and he was the caretaker of his brothers and sisters. And he was just like kind of angry. He was short-tempered. He couldn't really express love and emotion in a way. Like I never really could talk to him about anything I was thinking or feeling. Like I would see other like, women or friends of mine that had a relationship with their father where they felt like supported and loved and cared for. And I rarely felt that with my dad. There were glimmers of it, but it was so few and far between that I just felt kind of neglected by him. And I felt like I triggered his anger a lot. And I think he was very reactive to that all the time. So he was like a pretty aggressive parent. He was a big drinker. He drank a lot. And I found that really hard to be around. Like he would just be talking about himself 24/7 and like couldn't listen to other people. But it was more that I just saw how sad he probably was as a person.
So that's where you had learned to bring in an additional layer of understanding and empathy for the story behind the behavior that you would then use to kind of make this behavior more tolerable and maybe even more acceptable to yourself with dad and with ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
What about the one before?
Yeah, I think always.
I mean, to what extent is your ex-boyfriend a pattern for you?
Well, true. He was different in the sense of like he's still disassociated, disconnected, and kind of not really reliable, but in a different way. My other partner was like maybe not reliable and scared and would just like kind of hide away from confrontation. He was also like, I didn't really rely on him a lot.
Now you're talking about them.
Yes.
And I'm asking about the pattern of you. The constant factor in these very relationships is you. And this is not in order to find fault. This is also in order for you to recognize your own minefield, to recognize your own sensitivities, your own vulnerabilities, and to give yourself a sense that there is loss. You can't get around that. And there is grief.
Mm-hmm.
There is a questioning of yourself. But there doesn't need to be a condemnation of yourself to the point of, I don't trust anybody, I don't trust myself, I have no idea if I will ever meet. Life is a big unknown and a deep ocean in which you don't know necessarily what lies underneath.
Mm-hmm.
But the attitude with which you enter in that big unknown has something to do with what you discover.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you go in there saying there's nothing there, your eyes won't be looking with the same intensity and the same curiosity and the same aliveness and the same ability to imagine, than if you go in there and you say, that was a bad choice. That was not a good relationship. That was somebody who completely seduced me and ensnared me, and I fell for it and I loved it. And I actually still want it. I mean, that felt really great. But I want it from someone for whom it's not just a kind of allure and then a hook.
Mm-hmm.
And the next time somebody wants to move in after 2 months and somebody is promising me the moon,
Mm-hmm.
I take it, I listen to it, but with a little bit of a healthy dose of skepticism, of a healthy dose of curiosity, of let's see where this goes,
Mm-hmm.
of a healthy, slow, right?
Yeah.
So where's the pattern in you? Where's the constant factor?
Yeah, I was just talking to my therapist about it earlier about trying to understand like who I am in those relationships, and like sometimes I wonder, am I also the person bringing a similar dynamic, but I just don't have the recognition of it, like maybe a sort of I'm all about it, I want enmeshment, but then I withdraw at the minute that something feels hard or difficult or I don't know what to do with it, and like I can't sit with it, and
Is that a question mark or a description?
I think it's both, because I don't know, like I think for such a long time I thought, well, I'm not like that. I'm not afraid of like conversation. I'm not, but I think there was a dynamic that existed in my long-term relationship where I think I was the one that was more like dismissive and angry and frustrated, and I was like took a lot of things out on him, but I always thought that it was because he was just, you know, he was doing things to bother me, but I didn't look at myself, and so I did see that dynamic a lot and I tried to understand myself a lot and who I was towards him and why he might have felt the way he felt. I'm still trying to understand that, to be honest. And I think maybe what you know, I did was then swing the other way, because I like saw this other person as just somebody that wasn't afraid to like be with me and just say, I'm fully committed, I'm doing all this stuff. But then I didn't then bring my whole self there. I didn't kind of like acknowledge when things didn't feel right and express it, or I did. And then once I was met with something difficult, I stopped, I started becoming smaller and less communicative, and like in a way that I saw my ex was towards me, and so I was.
So you've been on both sides of the same dynamic.
Yeah.
And every time you say, I am this way because of the other person, I'm this way because you can also say, you are this way because I.
Yeah.
Because relationships are a figure eight.
Right. Yeah.
The more I withdraw and the more you what?
I think like the more I withdrew, but still wanted a lot at the same time. I don't know.
How does it show up? How does it show up when you withdraw while you want a lot? I mean, you make it look like that it's fine, I don't need anything, but underneath, if you went really granular about it, relationships are lived in the details.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I always imagine, if I am a camera on the wall, what am I seeing here? How does this thing play out for you? You're describing a very entrenched dynamic with dad. You didn't mention mom at all, but with dad, you're the daughter of the house, you're the fourth. You have a bit of a leeway that your brothers don't have. You want his attention, you want his affection, but in effect, you learn to become as removed as him.
Yeah.
So that if you don't get the attention or the affection, he won't even notice it, because in fact, you're acting like him with the expectations of you.
Yes.
One would see, if I look at you on the outside, what I see is someone who is removed and reserved and maybe even avoidant like him. If I do a scan and I go on the inside, I see someone who's longing, who's yearning, who would love to know what she means to him, who would love to get close to him. But neither does she tell him, and neither does he know. And part of her doesn't tell him because she doesn't think she would get it, because she doesn't think he's capable of it. But she continues to hope for it. And so there is an inside and there is an outside. And there is what she shows that is based on what she thinks that he can handle.
Yeah.
That's the figure eight. How does that resonate with you, what I just described?
I mean, it sounds exactly right. I would say there's also like a way of putting like a smile on it too, of like being still, you know, like withdrawn, seeming kind of like disconnected and not available, but also like maybe passive aggressive towards the person, like not telling them how I feel or having to figure out the most elaborate scenario to make sure I kind of express it to them in a way that they can handle, that they can manage, that it's like I'm having to kind of control the scenario. And I think of moments like that with my ex.
So you have to package it.
I have to package it very,
and
very
then
carefully.
You package it, and at the same time, you resent having to package it.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're presenting it with a smile, but in fact, your teeth would like to bite.
Yeah. Exactly. I feel very angry that I have to work so hard to bring a conversation to somebody in a way that isn't gonna ruffle their feathers, but I don't know how else to do it because I try other ways, or maybe I haven't. I didn't try enough, but it's like I get to a boiling point. So it's like I withdraw, and sometimes I've done this in friendships, you know, where I feel maybe hurt by them or I don't know how to deal with what I feel. So I just kind of go into myself, and then I get more and more frustrated, and I can just spin my own wheels of like overthinking and feeling like, well, they don't care about me. This person doesn't really love me. This person doesn't really want to know me. And if I do want to tell them how I felt in my relationship with them, I have to be very incredibly mindful of how I bring it to them. But sometimes I just want to be really blunt and honest, but I worry that will, you know, fuck things up with people. So I'm like, I can't do that. I've got to just like really think about it and really take my time and process, which isn't terribly bad, but it's sometimes I don't feel like it's always the most truthful.
Right. What would happen if you told them what you feel in a more unfiltered way? Are you afraid of your anger? Do you think they would leave? They would prove to you that they really don't care?
Probably.
And you have to constantly put everything into cosmetic? But then you resent the fact that you have to so lose your authenticity in order to preserve your attachment, that it's like they like you, but who is it they like?
Yeah.
They like a you that they don't know because you can't really tell them what you feel?
Yeah, exactly.
Is there one person at this moment where you are in that very dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, I've felt like it with my friends. Sometimes I feel like I can't always be myself. I mean, after all of this stuff happened, I was very, very, very low. And I had a lot of horrible thoughts. And sometimes I felt like being honest about those scared people and made them retreat. And I felt isolated. So I do have a fear that if I'm really honest, I'm either going to like frustrate people
or scare
people. Or scare people. And I had a recent dynamic with, I don't know if it's quite the same, but this guy that I sort of started talking to and through friends was very full on. I went and saw him and hung out with him, and then it just sort of changed very quickly. And And I had my reservations in the beginning of when I first started talking to him. And some of my friends were like, well, you thought you knew that it was going to, or you had feelings that it wasn't going to be great. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to be proved right. You know, like I have so much skepticism and fear going into situations, but I also try to also remain super open.
And how did you interpret that? When you say they proved me right, basically they said you knew, you heard them say you knew it, so therefore why are you so disappointed?
Yeah.
You knew it, what's the surprise?
Yeah. You knew
And
it. What's the surprise? Move on. That's how I feel about it. When it's said to me like that, it's kind of like, well, you knew that. Now you know. So let it go.
Yeah. And then you say, or you would like to say, we can have two buckets. The part of you that says what you actually say, and the other one that of what you wish.
Well, what I'd like to say is, well, no, fuck that. Like, there's a part of me that wants to like speak up and tell this person, like, hey, why do you treat people like this that you date? And like, there's a part of me that is like the fighter, but then there's also like the part of me that like listens to everyone else. It's like, oh, don't give this person the energy. They don't deserve it. And so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just move on. But there's this part of me that's like over here being like, no, like realize who you are in this world, in this dynamic with other people. And like,
What would you have wanted to bring to him?
I would have wanted to say, like, I don't understand what this dynamic was, why you were so full on in the beginning. And I mean, I don't know if I would word it this way, but I would definitely be like, you came to me with all this like affection and texting and discussion, but then when I was in your reality and I was there and I wanted to spend more time with you and I was honest about that, you kind of retreated and became distant, and that's confusing. And I found that confusing to be around, and I don't want that. So good luck to you, but I'm just telling you because that's how it felt to experience you as a person.
And why do you need your friend's permission for that?
I don't, but I just, I mean, it's like I don't need their permission for it, but I guess there's this societal thing of like, there's like so much shitty dating culture and like men feel bashed by women, I don't know, lately, which I think they deserve, to be honest. But like, I don't know. I guess I don't want to be seen. Also, I hear my recent ex, I think he has a very terrible view of women. And so I hear in my head how he's like, oh, she's going to claim gaslighting and she's going to, like, he would talk about other women. So there's this real like societal thing where it's like women are too sensitive, women are too like, they expect too much, or I don't know. I think there's like something, and I don't want to be lumped into that kind of like, oh, look, here's this girl telling me how I should be as a man,
Right. And it is a deliberation. There's a part of you that says, I would love for him to know how that felt on the other side. There's a part of you that says, I don't think he would get it. Why bother? Which is what your friends are kind of saying to you too.
Yeah.
Certain people are curious and eager to learn and to get feedback. And some people won't just send it right back in your face. And that's kind of what your friends are opting on, is they're protecting you, and they're basically saying, don't put energy on this. And a part of you says, but it's unjust. I want some sense of justice. And then you make your deliberation. It's like, I can bring it to him, but then, if he wants to, he can toss me to the category of angry women who are blaming men for all their woes, but look at them and,
right.
If they were so great, they wouldn't be there single at 42, right? I mean, we can really turn this into a real fist fight, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Another part of you may just say, I really enjoyed meeting you, and it was too bad that it took such a turn. The piece is, why are you saying this to him, hoping for what? If you need him to acknowledge something, that's one way. if you don't need him to acknowledge anything, you just need to feel like you said something because it's you and your conscience, then you say it. But that's a different set of expectations.
Yeah.
Then you don't look for his understanding and acceptance of your experience as a way to right the wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And your friends, when they say you knew it, they're not really I mean, maybe some say you knew it, therefore why are you making a big deal of this? And some say you knew it and don't let this person take more away from you. In a way, if you put more energy there, it's more frustration and more hurt on you. And honestly, in this jungle of dating, it's very difficult to know when, what, and which is the right response, let alone from you to the man you date, than for the women and the friends and the male friends, the them friends, all the friends that are around you. And you're going to hear a range of responses. And those responses are partly dictated by their own experiences, partly by how they see you, partly by what you're telling them that day and the tone in which you tell it to them. And so you get a full spectrum here. But I'm still wondering what would happen if you actually went not to this guy, but to the friends and you said, you know, when you say that, I know you mean really well. But at the same time, it did hurt me. Or I did, you know, I just find these openings very alluring, and then you just kind of suddenly get shut down. And it's really a shock to my system. I experienced that with a lot of intensity. I'm just telling you, you don't have to do anything. I'll figure this out. I'm an adult, you know. But it almost feels better for me if you don't try to make me feel better, so that I have the permission to feel bad.
Yeah.
And that is a situation that exists often in friendship. Don't make me feel better. Give me the space to feel bad in your presence. And then I'll get over it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking actually this morning to my therapist about that. A slightly different thing, but like another friend trying to get me to reframe how I feel about it. And I was like, at some point I will reframe, but right now I just want to feel bummed about this situation. And she was like, I get it. I hear you.
Okay.
So I do feel like there's ways in which I'm trying to do that more for myself, and that dynamic to shift a little bit, and also doing that for myself, you know, because sometimes I can get caught in a like, oh, I just have to like pivot this so quickly, and I don't let myself just feel what I feel for a minute.
Right. Before you get angry.
Yeah.
Before you get into the trap between, do I preserve the relationship or do I preserve my experience?
Yeah. True.
Right? It's really, you're going back and forth between, do I prioritize my authenticity, my experience, or do I prioritize our relationship and our connection? And at times they feel like they can't exist side by side. But though in the example you just gave me, they existed perfectly fine. There was a good example of, yeah, I just need to feel bummed out. I don't need to. I am. I feel bummed out. And I appreciate your effort to want to perk me up, but I'm not there yet. Is that okay with you? Can you handle me down?
Well, I think to be fair, you know, I mean, well, not to be fair, it's not a way to preface it, but my friends, you know, it was really hard going through what I went through. And I haven't even told you some of the other details of how my ex was bad, and my friends had to come to not my rescue, but they had to be like the person to tell me things about him while I was still with him.
Tell me.
What happened?
I mean, give me what's important for us to know.
I mean, it was a month after my father died, and he went to New Orleans, and he was planning all these trips with his friends. And then he came back, and word got through that he had been texting with this woman and was alluding to the fact that he was in a complicated situation, which was about me. And I challenged him on that. And so one of my friends came to me with that information, and he was very aggressive about it. And angry and then didn't really acknowledge his part in it. And I nearly split up with him at the time. And then I ended up getting back together with him. And then I found out that he then hung out with this person again. And it was like a lie. He lied to me. And then he became even more aggressive. And that's when he became abusive towards himself, threatening to kill himself, doing all kinds of awful things, threatening all of my friends, saying that he was going to go to their house. And he said awful things about people. I don't even want to repeat it, but it's just he was threatening them in this really disturbing way, and it really scared me. And that was within about a month or two after my dad died. So I was like pushing him, but I was also just so fragile still that I didn't know what to do with it all. I was just really shocked by most of it. And I didn't tell my friends the stuff that the way that he was. I didn't tell them until after I split up with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it was scary. It was very scary. But I know that they knew he wasn't safe at that point. And so I think they were really trying to protect me and trying to be part of my life, but didn't know how to like do that well. So I think, they've experienced a little bit of their own like trauma with me. Not trauma is maybe a hard word, but I think they were really scared, for me.
And have you ever said that to them?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
Good. I have. I talked to some of them, especially the ones that were like right at the middle ground of all that I understood what they were trying to do. And so I just think that's where I think they're very protective. They are like I've known them since I was 13 years old. Right. So they just want me to be, healthy and happy. So I get their motivation to reframe and to make me think about it healthier, but sometimes I'm not there yet.
Do you tell them how much you appreciate it?
Yeah, I do.
Good.
Maybe not enough, but I do. I try to.
You can never do too much.
Yeah.
In that department, because if a friend sees you go back to someone who is lying, threatening, cheating, dominating, controlling, using their power maneuvers, banging their head to elicit your rescuing, your pity, to disarm you, and you're in that entire escalation, and then they see you go back, it's scary.
Well, that's why I didn't really tell them about that.
Yeah,
part of his behavior.
But then you don't tell them because you feel because you know, and you know better, and you're ashamed because you don't want to tell them, but you feel like maybe you are so smart and you are so capable and you are going to change them and you are going to stop them and you are so unique and what you had together was so special. It can't be that it was just one big mirage. And so there is a kind of a grandiosity of thinking that matches the grandiosity of the narcissistic abuse.
Yeah.
I can handle this in a crazy way. No, you can't. No, it's not that you can't. You shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a way to live. Neither for him nor for you, but it's not a way to live. So being there is worse than not being there. But in that moment, it feels the reverse.
Yeah.
It's a real distortion. And it's very powerful. And it kind of completely blinds you of the reality that you are in. Yeah. And the worse it gets, and the less you want to tell your friends what he said, what he's going to do. And you don't want to tell them because then he looks even more dangerous and threatening and crazy. And then you being with him looks even more that there's something really the matter with you. And so this is how these kind of cycles perpetuate themselves. Yeah. Because the shame that you have about being there is now becoming the fuel for the secret of the people who could help you not be there. Does
Very
that
true.
Capture it?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's taken every month that I have not had any contact with him, I understand a different layer each time and of that dynamic, and that what you said about the, grandiosity that matches the narcissism, and the narcissistic abuse, and just like realizing all of that stuff and all the shame that I kind of carried. And I had my own reasons for being in it and getting whatever it was that I was getting from it,
Meaning?
I just think I was, I still felt this tiny portion of like love and specialness to a degree. And I think that was part of his dynamic with me, is that I think he could sense that I was not wanting to put up with it. And then he would just double down in some ways, but then in both ways, double down in the love kind of, and then double down in also the like
the meaning.
Confusion. Yeah.
And the demeaning.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's when I really feel like I very much lost like all sense of my own intuition and thought process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It has that effect.
Yeah.
The kind of back and forth between elevating you and making you feel like you're the only one who can understand him and you're so special, and then basically literally dropping you on the other side of the nothingness and the meaninglessness and the demeaning, has the effect of robbing a person of their identity. There is another form sometimes that we have of wanting to feel special that sometimes makes us think that we can handle things that in fact we shouldn't have to learn to handle.
That's true.
That's a different perspective of the word special. I can take it. And then when your friends say, you can take it, you're pissed.
Right.
Because you want to be able to say, I can take it, but you would like them to be able to say, lean on us. You don't have to be strong, resistant, hardcore, who can take it all the time.
Yeah.
And so you go back and forth. And this conversation ends with 3 dots at the end of a sentence, not with a nice bow and not with a conclusion, but hopefully with a little more clarity.
Yeah.
And what else?
I think clarity and compassion is something I've been thinking a lot about. Compassion and asking for compassion, but giving it to myself, but also just living in the world with more compassion and holding on to that more in a very real way. I think I've just lip service to it. It doesn't work. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
This was an Esther calling, a one-time intervention phone call recorded remotely from 2 points somewhere in the world. If you have a question you'd like to explore with Esther that could be answered in a 40 or 50-minute phone call, send her a voice message and Esther might just call you. Send your question to producer@estherperel.com. Where Should We Begin with Esther Perel is produced by Magnificent Noise. We're part of the Vox Media Podcast Network, in partnership with New York Magazine and The Cut. Our production staff includes Eric Newsom, Destry Sibley, Sabrina Farhi, Kristen Muller, and Julia Natt. Original music and additional production by Paul Schneider. And the executive producers of Where Should We Begin are Esther Perel and Jesse Baker. We'd also like to thank Courtney Hamilton, Mary Alice Miller, and Jack Saul.